at which this took place in Basque, Spain. And it took place between 20 and 25,000 years ago. That's right in Sheikh Ahmadiyya civilization barbarism. And he said that as the glaciers began to recede, that the Cro-Magnon Caucasoids went north with the glacier. They liked the ice. They had become conditioned to it. They moved north into Scandinavia, and then they went east into Russia, and further east into some parts further in Eurasia. And then they turned south and invaded Greece. You know what I'm saying? Invaded Greece and invaded India. And then came back around through what is called the Middle East, so-called Lebanon and Israel, and invaded Canada. But notice what was said in the 9th dynasty by Egyptian pharaoh in Margaret Lightman's book, Ancient Egyptian Literature, said this, that this pharaoh in the 9th dynasty, during a time of turmoil, says, oh, lo, there go the lowly Asiatics. They come from the mountaintops. They have their hands outstretched, they're hungry, and they have been fighting this time of horrors, meaning that these people come from mountain regions, they have a paranoid mentality, they have a greedy mentality, they're starved, literally, and they're always fighting. They call them Asiatics not because they originated in Asia, but because that's where we saw them first appear, when they came out of Asia, but they had started off farther back than that in the western regions of Eurasia, in the areas near the junction of France and Spain. So that's a little bit of the background. So we have another line. We have history, biology, and chemistry all crisscrossing the same thing. That somebody with a different kind of consciousness, with a different eye for Ruth, came in to our home, and he was paranoid, he was violent, and he was hungry. And he's been that way for a long, long time. So that was said before 2000 BC. And we knew his condition. Now, furthermore, it raised a question that when we look into another book that is called Thoth, the Hermes of Egypt by Bolin. Now I'm going to stop being the lecturer and now I'm going to be the school teacher. We both did. Thoth, the Hermes of Egypt by Bolin, it is said that Set used to not be a negative god. It was a god of the south. But following the invasion of the Hyksos, that the attributes of Set, which used to be positive, were then transferred to Jehudi or Thoth, and Set became labeled as the devil. And anybody with red skin was considered Set-like. I'm going to understand that. Somebody with very fair skin came through the desert, got sunburned, and they were paranoid, they were violent, and they were hungry. So we said, oh yeah, those red skin, sunburned skin means you have this kind of condition. You're devilish. So we began to equate, we began to look at a cosmic issue of the balancing of dark, light and dark, which weren't originally considered good and evil. That was just forces of nature. And we began to see the expression of a person who lacked moral strength, if you will, who couldn't keep their Sethian condition in focus. Their Sethian condition was wild and wicked. It was running the show, and it wasn't being balanced by my eye. If anything, it was in a celebration of Sethian ideals that they were involved in. Some people love blood. Some people love violence, despite what they might say. Some people get off with what we call a sadistic nature. Jeffrey Dahmer loved it. I'm temporary in North Carolina, and a guy down there ate up his best friend and his girlfriend. He came in on him. He was genitalia inside of a jar. That's not new news. There are many people who are necrophiliacs. There are many people who are cannibals. And again, the game of history is to do what? Is to take my impulses and my desires and to say that they're yours. Project them onto you. Make you appear to be what my own desires are. So that's a game. That's a hustle. But back to it, this person named Bolin makes the point of saying that the attributes of Seth were transferred to Tahuti, and then Seth became identified with not a cosmic condition, but to a human struggle between populations. An invader type called the Discos, these so-called invading mulattoes, say it like this, people who had many times been forced because the invading people had taken advantage of the family, killed off the daddy, raped the mother, and took the children of the mother as slaves and made them into their brainwashed slaves. But the children are still trying to gain daddy's acceptance, and daddy don't even care about it. He's just going to play on it and turn them out too. That game we see played time and time again. So that with this group invaded in, and then they're forced out in a war of liberation. Some say 75 years, some say 350, some say 500 years. In which, when the brothers came from the 17th dynasty, being led by a very famous sister named Teddy Cherie. Teddy Cherie is an elegant lady. She was the mother of Nefertari. But Teddy Cherie's husband, they rose up, and their children able to start their wars of liberation. And those brothers got so strong in the 18th dynasty, sisters got so strong, they chased those people all the way back to their home base, all the way back in northern Eurasia, and locked them up for 1,000 years minimum. Strong battles. But long story made short, please hear the Ayah Faru is the statement of what Africans really are about. They said that there was a regenerated eye that could come on when a person had fought with the evil. So they had two different conditions. They had I'll give you an example, the educational system that you already heard about. How many of you read George James' Stolen Legacy? I see a show of hands. Oh, most in this room. And so you've read in chapter 3 that in the education that there were three grades of students. The grade of neophyte, the grade of intelligence, and the grade of sons of light. And you've read that in a neophyte stage that you study the laws of nature and you practice the 10 virtues. In other words, you study physical science and you also contain or develop your own inner science by practice of the virtues. And as one did that, then one developed a condition called inner vision. Inner vision, my sisters and brothers, is an activated pineal gland. Do you hear that? That when you had developed inner vision, you had developed the sound eye. Jehuti, the god of magic, science, and writing, then had given you a vast expansion of intellect. So it's say that Africans knew, in other words, at that point in time, you were able to be consciously aware and to move through your car, the K.A. You could take your mind and project it in time and space. You telepathic. You could really tap your genius mind. In other words, that the mind had a supercomputer potential. It could pull memories from any ancestral memory that anyone who made up your bloodline ever had. Be it a grandfather, great-great-great-great-grandfather, mother, or whatever. And you could also pull ideas from the future. That when you reach this level, that you can then truly be a living God while on earth. even the fleshly body. So can you understand with that kind of knowledge why it is critical that the oppressor has to cover up what our potential really is? Your pineal gland is not likely to be calcified. But his is. Your potential is the same as his, but also far greater. Now, I do not know what they can do to decalcify their pineals, because is dependent upon a person wanting to decalcify their pineals. And I submit to you that some people love being like sex in a negative fashion. But it's very, very important to consider what other issues that do come up. Let's just read, for example, what some of these statements are, what we said about ourselves. Oh, take the Exlpores, prevent him meaning Set, from consuming it. O.N., take the Exlpores, the garment of which the gods are afraid of. O.N., Horus has attached his eye to your forehead for you, in his name, great of magic. O.N., take that of which the gods are afraid, just as they are afraid of Horus. Take the Exlpores against which Set acted. In other words, you have to really struggle with it. And that the struggle involved a study of science and living a virtuous life. Now, the virtues is a long list of 10 virtues and stolen legacy. You can also read about the 42 negative confessions that are cited in the Book of Coming Forth by Day, also cited by Budge, also very heavily cited by our own illustrious Dr. Youssef and Jarkana. But these are ethical ways, moral ways of relating to your family members in a way that will help you both to prosper. And also, it will help you to stay on the good side of the ancestral world. Because truly, to do things that run against your family line will mean that the ancestors who do live in us will cut us off from inner knowledge. Now, in the same notion, let us consider some other aspects. We've already covered that the melanin is a biologically active chemical present in skin cells that is also present in other organs in the body, brain, lungs, liver. That the pineal gland is a gland present in the brain that produces a hormone known as melatonin during darkness, and the hormone melatonin affects the production of melanin in skin through the pituitary, MSH, melanocyte-stimulating hormone, and it also very profoundly affects all the major glands in the body. We've also considered how the melanin, as it's exposed to light, determines the formation of vitamin D, and how vitamin D controls calcium being pulled back into the body. We didn't say this, but I can say it now, that vitamin D is a powerful hormone that acts in concert with melatonin. So just as melatonin acts upon the body to produce one kind of, you get a tranquilizing effect, that the vitamin D is an activating hormone, so it is the signal inside of the body of being exposed to sunlight. So it is what is called a somatotropic hormone. It makes things grow. Now, all this being said is to come to the key point. And the key point is that melanin is a doorway by which energies can move from the physical material level up to the spiritual level. It's a divine molecule. It's a life molecule. And in those things that were first, imagine in the very beginnings of life on this planet, 4.5 billion years ago, that those life-living chemicals could actually take sunlight, hold on to sunlight, and convert into a chemical that can be used as food so that an animal could reproduce itself, or the plant reproduce itself. So that's a critical point. Melanin is present in the eye, for example. The inner lining of the eye. You can even see black, white, or color only because you have melanin in your eye. In the layer of the eye I call the pigment layer of the retina, it is a layer that as the rods and cones share their disc of photopigment, and the disc again had captured photons, particles of light entering the eye, and as it hits upon that layer, the melanin plucks the photon of light out of the carrier molecule that for color vision or black and white vision, and converts it into an electrical charge. That's true of all eyes, be it black, white, green, or whatever. There's melanin present in the inner ear, that when you hear sound waves, the inner ear nucleus that has pigment, it converts a mechanical wave into an electrical wave, an electrical thing. So notice sound, vision, all these things very heavily involved in melanin. But let's take a little bit of a different track. You're being very patient. I'm kind of going through this in a kind of slow style there. Let's look at it from another standpoint. I should also mention that melanin is also, that the pineal gland in particular, is involved as an anti-cancer hormone. It slows down the production of cancer, especially breast cancer. That the pineal hormone melatonin is very actively involved in the woman's menstrual cycle. And that people can develop amenorrhea or lack of a menstrual cycle because of adaptation with the pineal. For example, when a woman goes through a long fast, she many times will become amenorrheic. When she goes through a period of stress, intense stress, her menstrual cycle can get thrown off. And that is operating through the pineal melatonin, which is a stress hormone. We also know that the pineal hormone melatonin are profoundly influenced not only by sunlight, but also by magnetic fields, especially the Earth's magnetic field. So all these things are there. There are various illnesses, if you will, that are treated. These are states of depression that are treated by what? By exposing to sunlight at a certain time of the night. There's a condition called seasonal affective disorder. And when people become depressed from the time, usually from October through about March, during the time of low sunlight or winter, and that they become irritable and cranky and mean and sluggish, and they also develop abnormal sleep patterns, they develop cravings for sweets, the sugar-free, and all those kind of things, and that the treatment for is expose them usually to an hour or two of sunlight of a certain kind of strength, during the nighttime hours to extend their amount of sunlight exposure. And that in itself is a treatment. And it is done so by reducing the amount of melatonin that is present in a person's system. We find that in conditions like depression and schizophrenia, the hormone melatonin is present in lower amounts. So again, you can tie all these things in. The various medications that are used to treat for depression, lithium, and antidepressants operate through pineal hormone. Very important. So there's a long list of things. And again, I went through painful detail to review a number of those. And it's present in this paper, which is a new paper called the Eye for Root, which is available in the back. And this is a review of the biological medical research of the pineal gland in the past 10 or 11 years. So this is new work that has come out since I wrote the book. And so this is the very newest thing. And it will probably be out just as one time, because I will, when it goes into the new book I'm working on, the Eye for Root, the editor usually shrinks things. So that's a struggle that all right, you have to bear with. I'm certain I'll have to deal with it too. But let's look at it from a different perspective. In this, I'm going to use another paper that is also available called Kinetic Images of Light, Sunlight and Moonlight. Now, after this, we're going to stop and have questions. So it won't take too much longer. Just bear with me. If we ask the question of sunlight as it impacts upon biological systems, especially because the skin is the first eye, as one author has said. The skin is the first eye. The pineal gland is the second eye. And these two eyes are the third and fourth eyes. Because in the early life forms, the first eye that came into being was the skin. It was this thing which would receive light and convert it into its various forms. In the older life forms, the The animal forms had eyes in the front of the head and eyes in the back of the head. And the eyes in the back of the head withdrew into the brain and became a gland in the higher life forms. The lower life form here, it remains, for example, in the western fence lizard, as a eye on the top of the head. But in the more advanced forms, such as humans and primates, it became a gland, still reacting to light, still releasing hormones in relation to light and darkness. In the Kemetic concepts, again, this new paper that was just written, of images of sunlight and moonlight, Africans had very particular concepts for sunlight and moonlight. When it came to sunlight, they saw light in three different aspects. They saw it in terms of the sunrise, the full noonday sun, and sunset. Sunrise was pictured as the god Khepra, Khepera, a god which was pictured as a dung beetle rolling a ball, the sun, across the sky. Now, Khepra was used for a particular reason, because it seemed to portray the African knowledge of immortality. They knew that in the human condition, there was something in the human that didn't die. That when it had gone so far and appeared to be dead, something new would come out of it and take life all over again. And so they observed that the dung beetle, which would roll a ball of animal, usually elephant or a large animal like that, feces across the floor of the savannah and put it in a hole and bury its larva inside, that from this ball of dead fecal matter, here came new life, new animals bursting out and flying away. So again, the morning sun, something about the sun being born again was critical. The noonday sun was pictured as Horus Ben-Hutep, or the sun in its full radiant power. And you can read about this in Gods of the Egyptians by Wallace Budge. But it was said to have been made by the Besnet, or the so-called blacksmiths. The Horus Ben-Hutep is a very, very ancient title. It goes all the way to the beginnings of Egypt. It goes all the way to the beginnings of Ethiopia, which preceded Egypt. It goes all the way to the beginnings of a place known as Kui land, the place in the Mountain of the Moon regions between the western Mountain of the Moon, the Rwenzori mountain range with 12 peaks and one central peak, and the eastern Mountain of the Moon, or Kilimanjaro. It goes to the beginning of the Ainu people, the so-called Homo erectus type, that type which over 1 million years ago, these Africans later went out and populated the entire planet. So that's Horus Ben-Hutep, and that takes you back to faith. And when you get to that in studying the issue of the blacksmith, and not only the blacksmith see of Etku, but also asking the questions of Horus Ben-Hutep and the Ainu population and where they originate from. And so when you come across a story, which I won't have time to get, well, touch one lightly here, the story of Ifa. Now remember Ifa, for those of you who have studied the Yoruba are familiar with Ifa, I'm certain, where Ifa speaks to a certain traditional system of science, if you will, of the relationship to the Orishas and to the deity of the unseen realm. But Ifa was also pictured as the first Twa person who made a mind map of the unconscious. Ifa was said to have gone, and this comes from the book, the Pygmy Katabu by Hale. Ifa was said to have gone inside the Mountain of the Moon. What does that mean? Ifa went inside of his own mind. Ifa went to the inner realm. And he was chasing a black pig, a black boar. And Ifa had these 3 spears. And Ifa was a hero hunter. He chased the boar inside the hill. And he said he took all 3 spears to throw them to slay this boar, or this pig. And he killed it. But the pig was too big to bring out. It's too big to carry out. So Ifa went on outside and got a rope to tie around the pig and pull it out. But when he went back inside with his rope, the pig was gone. And he saw a bloody trail going further on down inside the mountain of the moon. But the father, being fearless, went right on behind him. And he heard some noise as he went on down further. And lo and behold, he came across a woman with a white face who was a sorceress from the land of the dead. And you have to listen to the symbolism. Now this story is over 1,000,000 years old. Listen to the story. And he says, and the woman tells him, "Are you dead?" He said, "No, I'm not dead. I just came in here by chance. I just went inside my inner mind by chance. I got tricked." And she says, "Oh, why don't you come with me and spend the night with me, try to get sweet with him?" And he was repulsed by her coming up like that. She wasn't an attractive white face so at all. He was turned off. You know? But next thing you knew, she got close to him and checked the mood. She got close to him and she jumped on his back and rode him and says, "Now you go to my village. Brothers beware." Beware. Rode him to the village and said, "You're going to stay here for a while." He said, "Oh, I want to go home." "You got to stay here a while." Then the husband, the chief, came up and said, "Are you dead?" He says, "No, I'm not dead." No, he said the question, "Are you dead?" "No, I'm not dead." He said, "We got to stay here for a while." And so he stayed there. He sat on a stool. The stool stuck to his behind. Again, the issue of the archon stool and royalty. We have to consider all those points. And so then Ifa began to do the dance of the gods, to entertain these people. These people were so depressed. They were so gloomy and dreary. Does that sound familiar? That they needed Ifa to entertain them. Look at the parallel in today's world. What is our role to the oppressor? Entertainment. Service. Don't think, don't challenge, just entertain. Keep us happy with your dance. Now there are many levels in which to interpret this. This is one for certain. So after about 4 months had passed, you have to ask 4 months of what kind of year? Was it a 4 months of a regular 362-day cycle year? Was it 4 months of a great year, 25,000, how many years? If it's that kind of year, then you're talking about 6,000 years. And 6,000 would bring you from the year 4,000, the year in which the first dynasty came on, that we currently agree to, up to today. Or April, I want us to say it, April 29, 1992, Rodney King time. Or the end of the 500-year cycle from Christopher Columbus in 1492 up to 1992, in time which the Europeans were able to gain control over 2 continents, North America and South America, and even over our homeland. So very important questions being dealt. But I'm just saying all that, I got off the track, please. All that is tied into the noonday sun, Horus Ben-Hotep. Horus Ben-Hotep, in the Horus Ben-Hotep story, is a warrior story. It speaks of all the ways in which Horus dealt on Set, and how Horus, the kind of moves Horus had to develop to deal on Set. And Horus was absolutely ferocious. Oh, just sweet-witted. Went all over the country cleaning up his country. So it certainly has a model of how we can clean up certain tendencies in ourselves, be it jealousy between Africans, paranoia between Africans, or fear of confrontation with the lost ones. And very much the fear of confrontation with our fulfilling our own true purpose in life, whatever our spiritual mission might be. So we have the noonday sun Kepler. The rising sun Kepler, noonday sun Horus Ben-Hotep, the setting sun of Tumu. Now Tumu is another common, a very powerful concept. Tumu, the god of the setting sun. Tumu was said to be the first human to be worshipped as a god. Tamu was said to be the first man. So in other words, Tamu is the correct name for the original Adam, not Adam. That was the name we use for our own concept of Adam. It was the name Tim or Tamu. Now these various concepts of light indeed were considered in terms of the pineal gland or the eye of Peru. Let us consider one other aspect, and that has to do with the concept of the moon. A very critical thing, because when does the pineal hormone melatonin operate? During darkness. And I submit to you, brothers and sisters, that part of our enslavement, mental slavery, the oppressor knows who you truly are. He knows he can't compete. That's known. As long as they practice certain negative conditions, they can't compete. But they're hung up on practicing certain negative conditions. They love it too sweetly. It's between them and their God to come to terms with that. I, as a psychiatrist, I cannot make anybody get better who doesn't want to get better. I have no control at all. We just play games. And I have a lot of people who play games. Lots and lots. But it's not about healing. It's about wasting time, playing. Now the other point, but yet when we come to this thing about moonlight, notice the story. The god of moonlight is Tahuti, or Thoth. And Tahuti's primary companions, female companions, are the goddess Maat and the goddess Seshet. All three of these principles relate to states of mind, states of genius mind. The god Tahuti, or Thoth, was considered the perfect image of a super genius mind. Notice what that's saying. That Africans knew that inside of their own being, there was a part of them that was a god. Not a guess, but a reality. And it was a super genius quality. That meant that every African has a part of them which we call that special black factor. You know when you're in a crisis and you got to show enough get down and you step on it and then you hit light warp speed and do something fantastic, and then if you're still in mental slavery, say, oh, what was that? Oh, I'm so happy the Lord saved me. You saved yourself. But you didn't give true credit to your other self. You see, the oppressor knows there's a little you and the big you. And here is a key point of the game. A key point of the game is to hypnotize Africans and to make them only believe that the little self is the only real one. And to dismiss the big self as fantasy. Too good to be true. Or worse yet, Dracula or Frankenstein. Or the bad nigger. Any of those images are of super excellent achievement. The so-called super. Nothing super, that's just regular stuff. Africans called it the ka factor, the soul factor. It was this thing that was freed up by living a virtuous life and studying science. So the oppressor's game is to hide images of black excellence of mental function. When a black person like Michael Jordan plays basketball and shows great skills, they say, oh, it's what? Instinct. It's automatic. He didn't think it through. It's instinct. What is that trying? They're trying to hide no kind of instinct. He spent years and years of hard, diligent study and work. When it comes to a person like George Washington Carver, they do not want to talk about him at all. Why? Because George Washington Carver was the greatest living chemist on the planet in probably the past 10,000 years. But how did George Washington Carver become that? Did he go to Harvard? No, George Washington Carver led an ethical life, studied science and nature. In particular, George Washington Carver got up early in the morning while the sun was still down and went out in nature and held communion and conversation with the invisible realm. Meaning what? If you want to if you want to embrace your higher mind, you have to do it at a certain time in 24-hour day cycle. It's scientific. In other words, you catch it at a time when your melatonin level is already at its peak level at its midnight, and then shortly before daybreak, when the other deities are out there willing to converse with you. So says George Washington Carver could ask questions of his mind, say, I want to know this, and plant, what do you have to tell me? And then he could hear the plant talk back to him and tell him the chemical formulas and secrets. He was having a conversation with nature. Because George Washington Carver, just like you and I, are children of nature. I'm not out here trying to conquer nature. Why should I conquer my mother? Why should I conquer my father? They love me. And they've given me a mission here to do on earth. And if I'm true to it, I am blessed profoundly. And if I'm lazy, I get a little tightening up. But I'm still loved. But yet someone else doesn't see it that way. Someone else sees it as what? Oh, I only have half my melatonin. See, I can't see it clearly. I'm confused. I don't even see what it is. And in my rage of confusion, I want to destroy everybody and conquer everybody. A statement of desperation. But nonetheless, Tahuti, again, during the darkness phase, was the perfect image of a super genius mind. And it said that there were 42 negative confessions that one had to practice, or that you did not do certain things. So when you went to the Judgment Day, and Judgment Day is not just at death. Judgment Day occurs every day. Because when we go to sleep at night, our super genius mind leaves our physical bodies, goes to the judgment hall, and gives a report to the ancestors. Ancestors say, do you qualify for some more information? Or should you get a spanking today? You want to wake up depressed? Or do you want to wake up feeling glorious? Are you willing to be adventurous and humble? Or are you going to be arrogant and foolish? So again, this living relationship with the invisible realm takes place every day, not just at death. When you go to sleep, sleep is a kind of death, but so is a waking up, a rebirth. Now, very importantly, the goddess Ma'at was considered what was true, what was real. You know, in today's world, there's no such thing as reality. There is, they say you have the uncertainty principle. You can't weigh it and measure it at the same time. That's somebody else's formulations of nature, not ours. We said there was a right way and a wrong way. There was a right course for the sun to travel across the sky, and there was a right way for light to enter into your eye, a right way for you to your family, a right way for you to find your mission in life, a right way for you to live. And Ma represented that. And she was the goddess, the chief judge in the hall of Mati, where there were 42 gods. And one had to face these 42 gods in the judgment phase when one passed into that realm on a daily basis and at the end of a cyclical basis. A last point, the goddess Sechet was considered to be the goddess of the hall of books. So again, all of these mental factors seem from the African point of view to be tied to the nighttime phase, the phase of darkness. that phase in which a person was actually in contact with their own God potential inside the core of their own mind. And again, they were doing so with a sound eye of Peru and using powerful chemical keys to unlock the doorways to their inner mind. Now, all these things I've taken some pains to go over in this second paper called The Dramatic Images of Light, which is also available. But let me just kind of bring this to a summary and to a close. We have questions and answers, if you so please. In looking at black dot, a person asks, what does black dot represent? Black dot on the esoteric level represents the door. Its technical name is door. Door, dollar, dot, the unseen door. If you will, the 12th scepter on the so-called tree of life. And this door is a door by which energy moves from one realm to the other, from the spiritual realm, very fast-moving realm, into the dense material realm, or from the material realm, dense and physical, back to the spiritual realm. That Africans had defined this in a illustrious detail, in a super scientific manner, in the pre-dynastic era of Kemet. Kemet goes back over 100,000 years before the dynastic age. And that the African studies of science had gone on from the time of the parents of Kemet, Ethiopia, all the way back to the parents of Ethiopia. That is the study of, in Kui land by the African ancient people who are the parent stock of all humanity, who were engaged in science and exploration over 1 million years ago. So I do not know how many civilizations rose and fell in that time, but I can say with absolute certainty that the pineal gland is a critical. I guess there's somebody has to make an adjustment on one of these. But that was a critical point to raise, is that the black dot doorway to light, moving through different realms, sunlight and darkness, and that the study of biology is a strong study to show the psychological, the chemical basis for another level of expectation of the human achievement. But that, in summary, that these statements of the biological aspects of humanity and psychology and spirituality are all in the library. And it is a game of propaganda, politely called propaganda, more forthrightly called lying, trickology, hustle and pimping of information, twisting and playing games of truth that keeps a person in the dark. Sigmund Freud studied African studies of psychology. He studied Osiris, Osir, Amenta. He said that he spent more time studying history than he did psychology. Carl Gustav Jung, same story. But the trick is how to keep these people asleep, or we can steal their treasures. But that day is over. That day is gone. Judgment Day has come. Judgment Day is here. It's 1992. 500 years have passed. That time of theft and control is past. It is the 500-year cycle of the phoenix that will rise and fly again. It is the end of a 6,000-year period, the 4 months perhaps of Ifa. But it is time, my sisters and brothers, for Ifa to come back on out of mental, to wake on up, step on out the light, say, oh, it's a nice little rest. I saw some I had some rough dreams there. But now that I can see again, I guess I'll be getting on back home. And by the way, bring my treasure on behind me. Thank you.